Hello, and welcome to Use What You Know, Building Web Apps and Services with Google Apps Script. My name is Corey Goldfeder. I'm a software engineer on Google Apps Script, and I'll be your host today. So before we begin, this session has a little bit of an audience participation interactive section. So if you have a laptop, tablet, smartphone, which should be everyone, except for Googlers, please pull it out, and you'll have a chance to use it, assuming you can get on the Wi-Fi. OK. So use what you know. You already know a lot of stuff. You're sitting in this room. You're at a Google Developer Conference. You probably know a few things like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and JSON, RSS, XML. These are not new words to you, certainly. And what you don't know is how to use this stuff in Google Apps Script. And you also don't know why there is a dog, a napping dog, on my slide. So I want to solve the easy mystery first, which is I really like dogs. But we're going to go to the harder one. That's going to take a full session. So settle in. OK, so a brief history of Google Apps Script, the ghosts of I/O past, things we've launched, particularly in reference to user interfaces. So let me just give a history of where Apps Script came from. We started off embedding inside of Google Apps spreadsheets and sites primarily. You can manipulate your calendar, Gmail, contacts, lots of other services. There's a whole long list. And you can trigger scripts in response to events on time, on editing a spreadsheet, on a form submit, so on. But we grew up to be a bit more. We're also a platform for building standalone web apps and services. You can build a script to be deployed at its own URL. It can be published directly to the Chrome Web Store. We launched that integration yesterday. And it can just be authorized to you or to your domain. If you don't want it to be a public script, you can write your own little programs that run on the Google Cloud and our web apps just for you or just for your friends or just for your domain. So in 2010 at Google I/O, we launched UI App, which is it's based on the Google Web Toolkit. It's a cross-browser widget library for Google Apps Script. Easy to write, pretty easy to understand. And the key is you don't have to maintain separate client and server code. You write one script that has both your client parts, your server parts. It all gets managed. If you've done this before, or if you just use Google Web Toolkit, this will look fairly familiar. You create an application. Here we're going to add a label and then serve the app. And a little bit of app script lingo. You always start a web app with a function called doGet. OK, so this is a very basic UI app. In 2011, we said, well, UI app, sometimes that takes a lot of code. So let's let you draw an interface. We launched the GUI builder. Say what you see is what you get. User interface builder for UI app. You can build interfaces without writing anything. And it's compatible with UI app, both in the sense that you can embed these things inside of a UI app. You can use UI app code to manipulate or extend one of these. It really was generating the same stuff as UI app. So if you're following along, probably this year we're going to launch something related to user interfaces. Seems like a good bet, particularly because we launched it yesterday. So what I hear a lot from you guys is, sometimes I just want to write HTML. OK, so we're listening. Sometimes you don't want to write UI app. You want to go down to the metal, or the metal is defined as HTML, and just write what you want it to be. So I'm really excited to be introducing HTML service. I'm a little less excited because my PM leaked it yesterday. But I'm still very excited to be introducing HTML service, which is a totally new direction for writing web apps in Apps Script. Rather than using our widget library, you can write standard HTML, JavaScript, CSS. You can use jQuery and jQuery UI. You don't have to, but they're supported. You can go for it. And you have a built-in API to run functions on the Google Apps Script server. So now you can actually write the browser application you wanted to, directly the way you want it to, and still not lose any of that awesome Google Apps Script power, where you can call all these APIs. No need to go to a dashboard, enable things. Just start using everything in Google and build your app. OK, so let's take a quick look at what this actually looks like. So a few changes. We're going to make a little app called My HTML app. Wonder why. And the first thing you'll notice that it says code.js, because we now have two types of files, HTML files, .html, and script files for Google Apps Script, .js. Great. So in the HTML file, we're going to write a little bit of HTML, just a hello world example. And I'll make it bold to prove that it's actually HTML, which is hard to do. So save it. We're going to make a version, which is how we now, we're going to write a little function, the standard app script function to serve up a web app. So we're going to load that file by name. As I said before, we create the function called doGet. That's the entire web app. It's going to serve what we just made. So manage a version. We always have to publish a version before we make a web app. I made a page. And now we deploy. Deploying in Google Apps Script is always a joy. It's a few clicks. You can choose if it runs as you or as the person accessing it. You can choose who has access to it. I chose that it's for me, and it's only for me. No one else can access it. I get a URL, and there is, hopefully, some HTML. Google Apps Script can now serve HTML. Hello, world. OK. So if I wanted to, I could have published this to the Chrome Web Store, but I suspect that there is a lack of a need for another Hello World app in the Chrome Web Store. So let's build something a little more interesting with this stuff. And I'm going to invert the normal structure of these talks. Rather than build it up incrementally, I'm going to show you the whole thing, and then sort of whet your interest, hopefully. And then we'll take it apart and see how it was built. So let's build something fun with Gmail. So I'm going to play another video for you, because I don't trust the Wi-Fi here any more than you do. So I have my email inbox. There's a lot of messages there. I wish I understood the gist of what's going on in my inbox. Like, I just sort of at a glance see what people are sending me. Luckily, I've created a script. So I go to script.google.com. This script, it's about 30 lines of app script code. You can see it uses Gmail app. It has about 100 lines of jQuery, jQuery UI, CSS, JavaScript. We'll do a quick run through of this at the end of the talk. I just want to show it to you. It's not very big. We're going to deploy this. I've already deployed it, so there's already a version. Just get the URL. And here is a tag cloud live off my Gmail, updating. I have it updating every 30 seconds. But I can click on a tag and see the threads. They load in asynchronously, AJAX. I can click on a link, get a link to the real Gmail message. So this is a really cool understanding your Gmail app built in a tiny amount of app script. OK, so I'm going to do something exceedingly foolish right now, which is I'm going to give you all the URL for this app. It's goo.gl/lowercase x, capital A, lowercase a, capital O, capital R. Leave it up there for a second. And this is published so that it runs as you, the person using it. So it's going to ask for your authorization. And the reason I'm giving it to you this way and not through the Chrome Web Store, et cetera, is this is definitely a demo app. It may not work. I threw this together, over a course like 2 hours. So if it breaks, I don't want this littering the Chrome Web Store. So I'm going to do something even stupider right now. So I'm going to give you the email address that I was using, which is appscriptio@gmail.com. appscript, there are 2 S's in there, appscriptio@gmail.com. Please, over the next 20 minutes, message me. Send anything you like with the following caveats. Keep it clean, and realize that it might show up on the screen during my demo, and so it might be on the YouTube video, et cetera. So if you do not want your email to be visible, don't send it. OK, so I'm leaving this up for another second. You can try the app yourself right now. goo.gl, lowercase x, capital A, lowercase a, capital O, capital R. And you can send something to my account, where we'll look at my cloud at the end, at appscriptio@gmail.com. OK, I hope now you see that you can build really cool stuff with AppScript and HTML service. So let's take a dive into this, because this is an advanced session. We're going to see some code. Use what you know. This is our credo. The technologies you know, standard HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, optionally jQuery, jQuery UI. A lot of other plugins will work. I keep stressing jQuery and jQuery UI because we actually test those libraries, and that's part of our test suite, so we know those will work. But there's many other JavaScript libraries that you can just plug in and will work with this. And at the end of the session, we'll see why something would or wouldn't work, and so what you can expect to work. And you still get everything that you know and love about AppScript. You get the authentication with Google accounts, so you can say it only for these people, only for this domain. You get access to all the AppScript APIs. I use Gmail app in that example. You get painless deployment. Click or two, and your web app is ready to go. And you get embedding in Google Apps. So I didn't demo this yet, but anywhere you could show a UI app in the past, you can now show also an HTML service, which means you can have HTML with jQuery embedded in sites and embedded in spreadsheets. You can open up a dialog in spreadsheets with a full-blown web app that you wrote that is living inside a spreadsheet. So how do I call the server? Because it's really cool. I can generate this HTML. It's pretty on the client, but it's not really interesting unless I can make calls back to the Google Apps Script server and make it do things. OK, so introducing, this is I'm really excited about, the Google.Script API. And this is a real big change for us, because this is the first time AppScript is launching a client-side API. This does not live on our servers. This is going to live in your browser. And you can call our servers with this and run scripts. So you can make calls to the AppScript server from your client code. You don't have to worry about AJAX and XHR. And if you don't know what those words are, great, because you don't have to worry about them. We're going to do all that for you. You're going to make a function call on the client. Magically, it will happen on the server, and the response will come back. And that's all you're going to have to know about. So here's a basic example. I write a function on the server called doSomething, which logs that it, in fact, did something. And then I'm going to write a function on the client in my browser code. So inside a script tag, google.script.run.doSomething. And that's going to call the function on the server. I just want to point out right now the structure of these slides, because this is going to be the rest of the presentation. On the top, I have some Google AppScript code. That's server code. That would be in a code.js file. On the bottom, I have some HTML and JavaScript code. That would be in an HTML file. And since we're going to be talking about the interaction of these two files, virtually every slide will have some Google AppScript code and some HTML code. So you can do more than just call a function. You can pass information from the client to the server. Here I have a function getSubject, which in our Gmail app might have been useful to get the subject of a message. On the client, I can call it with a string, a Gmail thread ID. Hopefully, it would be an actual Gmail thread ID. And on the server, I will have that parameter. Now, it's not just strings. You can pass Booleans, numbers, arrays, objects. Basically, anything that can be converted to JSON, you can send up. And you don't actually have to do the conversion. You don't have to like stringify it and unstringify it. We will do that for you. So you can just send any object up, and it will get copied to the server. I'm not going to show here because it's a little bit of too deep even for this session, but you can even send up files through a file upload. So you can send up entire files. They get uploaded to the server in an AJAX-y way. You can use them, save them to your document, to your drive, save them to a site, email them, and return a response. And that's really cool. It's in the user guide, which was updated today as well. You can return a value from your function. So here I've filled in the top function, no longer a comment. Gmail app, we're going to get threads for that thread ID, and we're going to get the first message is subject. That's the subject that gets shown in Gmail in the user interface. So I'm returning it, but how does it get handled on the client? Because if you guys know anything about JavaScript, JavaScript is single-threaded on the client, which means that if we waited for the server to respond with the answer, your entire browser would freeze while that was going on. That's not a good idea. So what happens is, when you make a function call in google.script, it's asynchronous. So the function gets called to the server, and then your code continues where it was. You can specify a handler, a success handler. Here's what I've done here. I specified a success handler called myHandler. And when the server is finished, if it returned a value, it will call your handler with that value. And here's an example of a handler. So this handler would just pop up a browser message box saying the subject was and the subject of this thread. So this is actually a full use case of google.script. I have a function I'm calling on the server. It returns a value, so we get the full round trip, and it gets handled by a function on the client. Now, you can do more than that if your server function throws an error. So here I'm using x.y. X doesn't exist, y doesn't exist. Easiest way I know in 3 characters to produce a reference error in JavaScript. So that's going to cause a problem. And on the client side, I can add a failure handler, which will get an error object with the same message from the server. So it will get that reference error on the client, and it can do something with it. You can mix and match success handler, failure handler. There are other options as well. And you can look again in our user guide for a deeper dive on the things you can do to these functions. But it's really straightforward. So I just want to go through this really clearly. Google.script.run. You can add success and failure handlers. Function name in your script. Whatever function names are in your script exist on the client. You can just call them as if they were client functions. OK. Now, sometimes I hear, that's cool. I can create web pages. I can call back. But I want to create dynamic HTML. I want my page to actually have content in it that's driven by the script. And we got your back. So introducing Google AppScript templates. And this I'm more than super excited about. This is, I think, the most exciting thing for me today. Google AppScript templates. I want an HTML page, let's say, with data from a spreadsheet. And I could generate it in code, but that's a pain. So what I'm going to do, again, is use a templating language. If you have used PHP, ASP, JSP, embedded JavaScript, there's a Wikipedia page that lists all of these. I think there's like 200 of them. Anything with Scriptlet tags, this is going to look really familiar to you. You can mix and match JavaScript directly into your HTML. with the very industry standard Scriptlet style tag. So you do a tag that opens with a question mark and close it with a question mark, and in between is JavaScript. And that JavaScript is going to manipulate the HTML inside. So if you have a for loop, the HTML inside that loop will be output every time in that for loop, just like PHP or ASP or JSP or everything like that. A little grace note, you may notice that I've italicized the code that's inside the Scriptlet tags, because on the Google Apps Script editor, you'll actually see that. So we italicize code that gets run on the server, and we don't italicize client-side scripts. So you can at a glance tell which parts of your app are running on the server and dynamically generating stuff, and which parts of your app are running on the client. So I think that's pretty cool. I think it's cool enough to actually do a demo. Beforehand, I just want to go through the 3 things you need to know about Google Apps Script templates. First is their Scriptlet tag. We call it a standard Scriptlet. That's the question mark tag. And that just adds code. So if you want to add a for loop around some HTML, that's the way you do it. Second one should be very familiar also. It's the question mark equals tag. We call that a printing Scriptlet because it runs some code and also prints out a value into the stream. So this is the easiest way to get a value from your server code into your dynamically created page. And finally, there's a force printing Scriptlet, which does something about escaping. And I'm going to not explain that now. Let's show you the demo. And then after the demo, it should be a little easier to explain what a force printing Scriptlet is. So let's play this. I have a spreadsheet. And in this spreadsheet, I have the things I like and don't like about various days of the week. For example, Friday. I like the fact that it's before Saturday. I don't like the fact that it's after Thursday. Here's a really simple function. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I use HTML service. I'm going to create a template from a file. I'm using a spreadsheet app to get the active spreadsheet to get the data, stuffing that onto a variable on the template. In the template, it's the same code I just showed you. I just added a little bit of styles around it, some CSS, some class names, and a style sheet up top. But that's selected as the same code that was in my slide. So this is just a for loop. And if we run this function, it's actually going to show this as a dialog in the spreadsheet. So there is the exact same data in the spreadsheet as an HTML dialog in the spreadsheet. And again, I could have done jQuery, AJAX stuff, calls to other servers, anything I wanted to there. Let me show you how templates work. So here I'm logging a function called t.getCode, template get code. If I look at the logs in a second, if I look at the logs, I'm going to see this mess of JavaScript. And here's a really cool feature of Google Apps Script templates. We actually generate intermediate JavaScript that you can debug, and we show it to you. So you can, at any point, get the code, see what it is, look for bugs, fix them if you want, or go back to the template and fix them, and you can really debug what's actually going on. If you would like a different view of it, there's actually a different function, which we'll see in a second, get code with comments, which is also a debug function. It's going to give you the same code we saw, just this time with an interesting set of comments. Let me just copy paste it out because it's hard to see in the logger. So every line of the original template is a comment to the corresponding line in the script. So you can easily find where your bugs are. If you have a mistake, this is a line-preserving transformation. So you can actually see, here's my bug, here it is in the script, let me go to the template and fix it. And this is the fastest way I know to debug a template. Much easier than sort of grepping around the template trying to figure out what happened. Because this is line transforming, the code that you generate actually has some cool properties. If I add that same reference error here, so throw an error, let's notice it's on line 6. OK, we've noticed. If I run the function, I should get an error. And in fact, the error is on line 6, because the intermediate code we generate is line preserving. So rather than hide this behind a layer and not let you see what's going on, we want you to see exactly what's happening. This is a JavaScript transformation, and you can see it, and you can work with it and make it work for you. OK, so what was that stuff about escaping and force printing? We have 2 types of printing scriptlets in AppScript templates. We have the regular printing scriptlet, which makes sure you don't do a common mistake that can really bite you in a web app, which is it doesn't let you accidentally inject JavaScript or HTML. If you use a printing scriptlet and you have, let's say, some HTML or script markup, it will actually contextually turn it into a string. If you're inside JavaScript, it will become a JavaScript string. If you're inside HTML attribute, it will be correctly escaped with HTML entities. Wherever you are, it will say, no problem, I will make this appear as text. If you use a force printing scriptlet, you know what you're doing, and it's going to print exactly what you said into the stream. So here's the difference. I have a little template on top. I have a string with a script. The script does a very bad thing. It says so. And I have two force printing scriptlets that are going to both print out the same exact string. Sorry, two printing scriptlets. One is a printing one, and one is a force printing one. Here's the output. The printing one actually prints in the text of that script tag. So you can't make a mistake. You can't have an XSS attack. You can't have someone injecting JavaScript or HTML that you didn't expect or styles into your code. The force printing one looks like it did nothing, but actually it printed a script tag, which is not visible, and is doing the very bad thing. So as a rule of thumb, use the printing scriptlets, which are the standard looking scriptlets, the ones that look like every other language, and only use the force printing scriptlets when you know what you're doing and you know exactly where your data comes from and you trust that it doesn't have anything nasty embedded in it. So let me recap HTML service. Use HTML service to serve HTML and JavaScript. Call back to the server with google.script with our new client-side API. And generate dynamic content with Google Apps Script templates. I think together this is a really powerful set of tools for building web apps with Apps Script in a way that you couldn't do before. HTML service does have some limitations because it runs on the script.google.com domain, which means that we're serving it on google.com, and we have to make sure that certain dangerous things can't happen. The first thing that HTML service limits you to is ECMAScript 5 ES5 strict mode, which is the newest version of JavaScript. Now, even on a browser that doesn't support ES5 strict mode, HTML service rewrites your code to emulate ES5 strict mode. In practice, that means you don't get with, you don't get eval, you don't get arguments.callee. You should rarely notice the difference between ECMAScript 3, which is the current standard, and ECMAScript 5. I mean, it's hard to tell. Scripts can't access cookies or other browser resources. You can't navigate the history. You can't get cookies. These are security provisions to make sure that you can't do things that the user didn't expect. And at some point, well, we may look into opening some of these up. But at the moment, this is the state of the world. And finally, scripts can't dynamically install new scripts. You can't get around our sandbox by writing a script tag into the DOM and loading in something from somewhere else. I think that last one actually is worthy of its own slide because it's probably the one place it's easy to get tripped up in HTML service is this restriction. So like I said, first, you can't dynamically add a new script tag. That's the obvious place where this restriction shows up. The less obvious place is this. This will work. I write a new button into the DOM, just a text, and I associate a function with that button on its click handler. That is totally fine, and that will work. This, which is a common pattern, will not work. I write a function with an on-click handler written right in as text. And the reason that won't work is that to our sandbox, that looks like a brand new script that we have no idea what it is, we've never seen it before, and we can't properly guarantee that we can sanitize it. Now, the good news is we actually think we do know how to do this, and we're looking very forward to lifting all of these restrictions in the near term. But for the moment, what we're launching is you cannot dynamically install new scripts, either via a script tag or via this method. Now, it's not just about limitations. HTML service also gives you some awesome new stuff that you wouldn't get with just plain old JavaScript. First of all, we emulate ECMAScript 5 strict mode everywhere, which means that regardless of what browser you are actually running on, you know what version of JavaScript is actually running. It will always be the same. We fill in missing modern JavaScript functions in all browsers. If you've used array.map, function.bind, object.keys, these really super useful functions that exist in modern browsers, well, now they're available in every browser, not just Firefox, Chrome, Safari, and Opera. So you can use all these modern functions on any browser you like. You can use jQuery and jQuery UI, even embedded in a spreadsheet. This is really awesome. You can, inside that spreadsheet dialog that I showed you, you can do anything. And the reason is we trust our sandbox. And so whatever you're doing in there, go wild. If you could do it at a web app, you can do it inside a spreadsheet. Now, Google Kaha, which is the underlying technology here, is open source. You can get to it at developers.google.com/Kaha. And this is cool because if you see a feature or a bug, help us fix it. This is an open source project with really, really active development, and we are using the, the latest version of it as soon as it gets pushed. So you can join in with us and make this service better. So I have a few minutes left. And I feel like I have enough time to launch one more major service. And I'm really excited because this is the first thing I'm launching that my PM has not yet leaked. sometimes I hear from you guys, I don't want to return HTML. I just want to return JSON, or RSS, or XML, or something like that. Well, we heard you say that too. So introducing Content Service, the twin of HTML service for everything that is not HTML. You can return text from a script. And by text, I mean you can return JSON, RSS, XML, Atom, whatever it is you're writing for a service, you can return it from a script. This is perfect for writing things that will be consumed by other programs. So if you're writing something for consumption by an RSS reader like Google Reader, or something for consumption by another API or another web service that you want to be able to hit your script and do something. If you're writing something so that an app engine program could call your script and get back a JSON response using your script as an API, this is for you. And no Caja or UI app sanitization applied. Whatever you tell us to return, this is what we return. The way we do that, if you look in our user docs, you'll see the tricks we have to do to make that safe. But as far as you're concerned, you return text. You say, I'd like to serve this text. We serve that text. And you can use it in services. This is the entire API. I would love to complicate it, make it sound complicated and cool, but no. You do content service, create text output, put the content you want in, and then you can optionally set a MIME type. You don't even have to set a MIME type. It defaults to plain text. You return that from a script, from a do-get function. You have an API or a service. That is all there is to it. In fact, I'm not even going to show you the Hello World demo, because this would be the entire thing, and it would show Hello World. So let's go with a slightly more interesting demo. That email address, appscriptio@gmail, which you have been assiduously emailing things to, I hope. We'll talk about that. Well, that email address, which I have pre-recorded a video from, I would like to see it not just as a tag cloud, but I'd actually like to see a version of this as a RSS feed. Let's see how easy that is to do. I claim I can do this in 4 lines of AppScript code and 15 lines of HTML. So I'm using content service, create text output. I'm using HTML services templates. I'm not actually serving HTML. I'm just using the template structure to build an RSS feed, because XML, HTML, it's all the same. I use Gmail app get inbox threads. I'm calling it from inside the template. That will work. Why not? I loop through the threads. For each thread, I create an RSS item. It's pretty straightforward. And then I'm going to publish this as a script and see what happens. So I've actually already, I have to authorize it, of course. If you have to authorize this so that I can use your Gmail. Or a new deployment. And I'm going to deploy this. Just be careful. I have to deploy this so that's visible to anyone, including anonymous, because Google Reader visits URLs as anonymous. It has no credentials when it visits URL. So it's crucial that if I want this to be read by a RSS reader, that anyone has to be able to hit it. In practice, that means that anyone could read this feed if they had the URL. And so it's not a great idea to put something private in that feed unless you're very careful about not giving anyone that URL. OK, here's the big red subscribe button. I'm going to drop in that URL. I want to be clear. This is the URL of a script that I'm treating as an RSS feed. Click Add, and here we go. There is my email as an RSS feed. 15 lines of HTML templates, 4 lines of AppScript. Tell me how hard this would be to do on any other platform. Now, so I want to just emphasize, you can do a lot more with this than just turn Gmail into RSS, which is itself kind of awesome. You can filter RSS feeds. There's a great Google feed fetcher API that can fetch any RSS feed in any format. It gives you a standard JSON output. And you can build feeds out of that. So you can build filtered versions of your favorite feeds. You can pull in 2 feeds together and output a combined feed. You can take 1 feed in and output 2 URLs that have different parts of the feed. You can do anything you want. And that's just with RSS. You can build APIs that return JSON, XML. Like I said, anything that's text, build it with this stuff. So that raises an important question. What should I use? I have UI app. I have content service. I have HTML service. Which one do I use when? And the answer is it depends on what you want. All of our output types complement each other pretty well. Use UI app. If you're building a simple cross-browser compatible UI, you don't want to deal with writing client code and server code. You want to show a few buttons, some text, have some interaction, maybe some AJAX. But the basic idea here is you want it to be simple code, and you don't want it to deal separately with the HTML. Use HTML service to build complex AJAX web apps. You want to write down to the metal, make something that screams, make something that's exactly what you wanted. HTML services for you. You can write exactly what you wanted and still call back into Google Script anytime you want. And use content service to build services and RSS feeds, things that are consumed not by a user, but by another program. Pretty straightforward. I think it's easy to choose, depending on your result, what you want to do. Remember, the same script can actually serve all three. You can have a parameter in the URL at the end, and so have the same script serving an RSS view of something and an HTML view, depending on the URL parameters you put in. OK. So let me just wrap up all the things that Google Apps Script has launched this week, because I just want to point out how awesome this is. We have really changed the product, and I think it's much more powerful today than it was a few days ago. We launched standalone scripts that aren't tied to spreadsheets. They live at script.google.com. Or you can go to Google Drive, click the Create More menu, and see scripts right there in your drive. We launched scripts that run with the authority of the user, not the script author. So it runs not as me, but as you. When you run it, you get to authorize it yourself. The ScriptDB store, a database for building scripts that need a database, a JSON-based NoSQL store, and there's a talk on this in room 7 at 5:15 by Drew, and I really encourage you to go to it because you'll learn a lot. Direct Chrome Web Store integration, again, we launched that yesterday. A few clicks, and your app is packaged up, ready to go into Chrome Web Store. All you need to do is add a description and an icon. HTML service and templates for building dynamic web apps. If you don't know what that is, you have been asleep for 40 minutes, and shame on you. Content service for building services and feeds. That is a lot of stuff. I just want to run through the code of Gmail tags one time, because I promised this at the beginning, and I didn't really deliver on that. So I just want to, I'm not going to go through, before everyone starts glazing over, all the code. I just want to demonstrate the fact that the things that we talked about today are what's inside of this. There's a do-get function. It's creating a template from a file, just like we talked about. There's a function getThreadBody. It's just like the getSubject function. It takes an ID and returns the body of a thread. This one is a little more complicated. It gets the tag cloud. It does a lot of analytics about what's the common words in your Gmail. But it's purely AppScript. There's nothing new about it. It's just a little bit of AppScript. Here we're using on the client in the HTML jQuery, jQuery UI. We have a server function, a server variable, getGmail tags. And here's something really cool. We can pass that server variable to the client by writing it right into the HTML. So here we are, var tags in the client equals tags from the server. And that data is now baked into the HTML that we serve. That's some jQuery, jQuery UI. I think we'll just skip over that. Look on jQuery website to learn how to do that stuff. Here we have a google.script.run with a success handler. I inlined the success handler, so it looks a little complicated. But at the bottom down there, you can see it's google.script.run, get Gmail tags. Same function from the server. We're calling, once we're calling it at the top, and once we're calling in the middle. And it's just actually refreshing every 30 seconds. Here's a lot of styles. We'll skip over those. They're just regular styles. And at the bottom, here's a little template. Because the first time we load the page, we don't want to make an AJAX call and have to get the clouds that way. So the first time we load the page, we write the cloud directly in with the template. And after that, every time afterwards, we refresh it. OK, that is actually the entire app. And it's really not that complicated. 88 lines of HTML and JavaScript, a little bit of Google Script, Google Apps Script. OK. So let me do this. Here is my, mine is working. So here is my version of the app coming off of my page. And I actually have no idea what's here, because I haven't, this is different than what I showed you in the video, because people have emailed things. So I'm going to click the very large JavaScript word and see what threads have to do with JavaScript. Loading from the server. Web apps are hard. Let's go scripting. So it is, there we go. The law of demos did not apply. All I want is a bit of HTML, a side of JavaScript and data centers for as far as the eye can see. I have weird friends. OK, so one more thing to show you in this demo. There's a little uglify button. It's unfortunately off screen. It says uglify. I'm going to click it. It will make things ugly. And the reason for doing that is I wanted to demonstrate this is real client code. That's actually a fairly interesting thing that's very hard to do with UI app and trivial to do with HTML service. And I just wanted to demonstrate that this is straight up client code. I'm writing style sheets in. I just flipped the style name on the top level item, and that flipped everything over. And I can go right back to Prettify. Okay. Moral of the story. Go away, or I will replace you with a very small Google Apps Script. There is so much that Google Apps Script can do in so little code. And I think that's like the coolest thing. You go to script.google.com, you type a few lines of code, you click a menu or two, and there is your app. That's it. There's no deploying, there's no making jars, there's no XML configuration. You don't even need a separate IDE. You go to, on any web computer, you go to script.google.com, you type in the logic, just the logic of what you're trying to do. None of the boilerplate, just the logic of what you want it to do, and there you are. There's your web app. OK, so I'm printing thank you, not force printing, because I don't know who that came from. And I just want to point out, before we take any questions, that you can join the Google Apps Script community on stackoverflow.com. We have an active community of questions, answers, both from the team and from external developers like yourselves. Thank you very much. And any questions? Just want to say, if there are anyone who does have a question, if you can come to the microphones in the middle so that they'll show up on the YouTube video and we can hear them.
So my question is, what would be the URL of this app that you showed us? I'm sorry? What is the URL of this app?
I can get back to it afterwards. I actually don't remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah, but can you control what's the URL of the app?
So the URL that comes from the script is tied to the script. But of course, you can alias it any way you like to, you can make any URL redirect to that URL, so that will work.
And can you deploy some extra resources like CSS files or images?
Yes, you can link in external CSS resources, external JavaScript. Anything you link in gets linked in on the server. So even though it looks like a link on the client, we actually link it in on the server, parse it out, and sanitize it right there.
But you have to host it from another server, yeah?
No, you can, well, OK, so you can do two things. You can host it from another server if you want to. That's where I got the jQuery library from and the CSS that I was using. You can also have an HTML file, which just has it's not a CSS file, but you can have a style tag in it and just inline it directly in. So you can have libraries that you can build AppScript libraries that have all kinds of client code in them, and instead of doing link source equals, you just inline them in. In practice, there's no difference because we are going to inline any external resource anyways, the way that we do the sanitization. So there's no performance difference between inlining and linking an external resource.
Okay, and like images, I have to host outside of the...
Images, so I didn't mention something. There's images, we proxy them through the Google image proxy, so they have to be publicly visible. But aside from that, they can be anywhere. So anywhere you could use an image with UI app before, you can use now. We do not have integrated image hosting for Google Apps Script at the moment.
Okay, so it looks like I can use it for most of the apps I will be writing. And so what I shouldn't use it for? What are the use cases I shouldn't use them?
I think this is really great when you're trying to build something that's about Google Apps, where what you're trying to build requires deep integration or fast integration with Google Apps. Because you have all these APIs, right? They're baked right in. You can see that it's a single line of code to get my inbox spreads from Gmail. Everything is like that. All the APIs are like that. So if you're writing an app that's about Google, about your account or the user's account, this is a really great tool. If you're trying to build a service that has nothing to do with Google, some of the limitations we're putting on you are going to be limiting unnecessarily, right? The rewriting of HTML, et cetera. You won't need those things because you're not using any Google features anyways. So for those cases, I think Google as a company has a lot of ways that you can build apps. But if you're trying to do tight integration with apps, and particularly if you're trying to do extensions to apps, this is the only way to write extensions to apps. So if you're trying to do anything with tight integration to apps, I really encourage you to use AppScript.
Okay, thanks. This is great.
You mentioned pictures must be visible publicly. So I cannot take any images from my Google Drive?
If there's a publicly visible URL for that image, I believe you can set that in Drive, although I could be wrong. I believe there's a way to set up publicly.
But only if it's public?
It has to be public. This is actually a security restriction for very interesting reasons. There's a lot of dangerous things you can do with images, shockingly dangerous code that an image can cause to execute. All we do is make sure that that image that you load doesn't have any of those things in it. And we need to be able to load that on the server, not on the client, because on the client, it's too late. Once we've loaded that image, we can detect that something bad happened.
But if it's already on Google Drive, you have access to it.
So in the future, that is a good point. And in the future, we probably should look into a integration where we can serve directly from Drive.
Or from Picasa.
And I see that my team members are nodding that this is something we have talked about. At the moment, we do not treat pictures from Google any different than any other pictures. But that is definitely something that is certainly something we've thought about and should think about.
What about like PDF?
I actually don't know. I think PDFs will work. We should find out.
I mean, private PDFs?
There's no difference. So anything that you're showing in an image tag is going to have to go through the public path.
OK.
But you can link to things, right? Because you can link to things and load them in the page, et cetera. So, are there any other questions? There are 2 microphones, going once, going twice. Well, thank you very much, and I hope that you enjoy working with Google Apps Script.